Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are just hitting the 1 o'clock hour. My name is Jessica, and I will be the moderator for this roundtable discussion. And there will be a question and answer session at the end of this meeting, so please use the chat to submit your questions throughout the discussion, and we'll get to as many of those questions as possible. So go ahead and use the chat to tell us what school you're joining from as we wait for people to join in. This is the second roundtable discussion we have hosted for schools in the Carolinas and Virginia. And once again, it's really awesome to see the number of schools represented on this call. If you're looking at the chat, you can see them scrolling through. At this point, I want to let our panelists introduce themselves, and then we will get right into our first topic.
Hi, good afternoon. Am I showing up?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Liz Greenlee. I'm at Radford University, which is in Southwest Virginia. I'm currently the Associate Director of Recreation and Wellness, overseeing facility and operations and fitness and wellness programs. And just so you guys know, there's two Liz's. So I'm Liz from Radford.
Hi, Jessica. I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay.
This is Linda. I introduced myself beautifully on mute. My name is Linda Knight, and I am the Executive Director for Health and Wellness and the Director of Campus Recreation at the College of William and Mary.
Brian, can you go ahead?
Yes, my name is Brian Arnold, and I am the Director of Campus Rec at Gardner-Webb University. We are located about an hour from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're a small private institution, have about 11 plus that live on campus outside of the coronavirus.
Cliff, can you go ahead?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Cliff Bobbitt. I'm an Associate Dean of Students and Director of Campus Recreation at Methodist University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We have about 2,400 students.
Okay, and we have one more Liz from UNC Charlotte. Go ahead, Liz.
Hi guys, so my name is Liz Rosenberger and I'm the Assistant Director of Strength Training and Conditioning at UNC Charlotte. So I work mostly with part of our fitness programming with personal trainers and then some of the staff that oversees the fitness floor operations.
Perfect. Quick reminder that as our panelists begin speaking, you can write any questions you have in the chat. Although we will keep all other participants muted throughout, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. So with that, let's jump into our first question, and that is, what are a few of the specific ways you plan to make your facility social distancing friendly when it reopens? So Liz at UNC Charlotte, could you lead things off?
Yeah, so this has been kind of a tricky question, I think, for most of us on the call today. You know, something that I myself have been discussing with others in our pro staff is that we're kind of in this holding and waiting pattern with both mostly what the CDC is going to pass down for the next, foreseeable, like 1 to 2 to 3 to even 6 months. And then off of that, we're going to move into what the state government and then local governments decide to implement from some of those recommendations. And then lastly, the university is going to make some decisions from the top down to pass down to us. So some of the conversations that we've had thus far have been around things like possibly limiting operational hours. We may end up also looking at, tracking how many participants are coming into the facility and putting a cap on that as well. And then the other piece we have, which I know we're probably going to talk about in the next question a little bit, but is the spacing of our facility. Are we going to possibly restrict or limit different areas within the building as well? So I won't talk too much about that because I know we'll probably answer that in the next question as well. But there's just a lot that's going to go into factoring in spacing. How far apart people are going to be from each other, how many pieces of equipment we have in each floor, in all the spaces. And I hate to do the whole, we don't really know all the answers, but honestly, at this point, we don't really know all the answers. And so there's been conversations around what those restrictions will look like, but nothing formalized yet, just because we do have to wait for some of the guidance from really the top down of CDC to then state government to then local and then finally university decisions. So definitely spacing of people in the facility, hours of operations, and then how many in each space, I think is going to be some of our first implementations once we know what those parameters are going to look like.
Brian and Cliff, I know both of you wear a lot of hats at your campus, and I know you don't necessarily have a large support staff to delegate things. So I want to be sure to ask both of you, and whichever one of you wants to answer first, you can, but I want to know how things have been in your worlds, because I know many participants on this call may be in a similar situation.
Sure, I'll start. At Gardner Webb, we do have two professional staff. It's myself, and then we have a functional fitness coach that she basically does most of our some of our group fitness strength classes things, and so it's just the two of us, and we have about 30 work study students that work in our facility, and we have two graduate assistants. And so we do have a really small staff. And so we want to put as much of this on the users as we can. We also don't want to panic because when we panic, it's messing with people's mental health. And being in Campus Rec, we care about people's whole well-being, not just physical health. And so so if we're panicking and running around and spraying every time somebody touches something, we're just instilling fear in people. And so we can't do that either. Within our county, Cleveland County, we've only had 47 cases, I think. And then the surrounding counties around us are relatively small too. Like the 4 counties around us, we're only talking 9 deaths total. Nine's too many, but so we just can't panic. And so our facility's small. Well, our facility's big enough, but our population is small enough and rural enough that, some of the self-distancing stuff will take place naturally. And the fact that summer school's online for session 1. So users will be down. We're talking mainly faculty and staff. We only have 500 faculty and staff members anyways as a university. And so some of your campus rec staffs are that big. So so some of that stuff takes care of itself, but we'll provide like personal towels and personal spray bottles for people when they come in and out. We'll clean those things when they get finished with them. So get rid of some of the stuff and stick to more personalized stuff because our size allows us to do that.
I agree with the previous 2 speakers. The thing that's helped us at Methodist is we're one of the later facilities to close. So we got a little bit of practice with this toward the end of the semester before we called it quits. So one of the things I was thinking is we control access to our building. We're a 1-floor building, small institution. We let limited numbers in at a time. We control the access with our student workers and our professional workers. That was one of the things. We have to put it back on our visitors to the facility. So I think signage is going to be very important. If we can put signs up to increase people cleaning before and after usage of equipment. Also, creating spaces to social distance as much as we can. Because we're a small facility, we talked about possibly restricting some access and even scheduling time for people to come. Another thing we talked about, I met with my staff recently, which if you haven't met with your staff, I recommend highly meeting with your staff and start discussing some of this. We talked about possibly every 3 hours shutting down for an hour to clean the facility properly and then open the facility back up. So I think we're trying all these things that Brian and Liz and it's just going to be a learning and progress as we go.
Yeah, just from a little bigger facility, from the College of William and Mary, just some things we're kind of thinking of. We use Fusion, and I'm sure some of you all also use Fusion. Another one is MindBody that we use to do some scheduling. They are both adding components, I think, to their program that will allow students to reserve a time in the rec center. So if you're limited to 100 students in your rec center at a time, when they can sign up on Fusion to come in from 11 to 12, and then when it's got 100 students, then you cut it off. And even to go a little more specifically as to what spaces they might use. If you get 100 people that all want to use a weight room, you may be in trouble. If you get 100 people that want to use the cardio equipment, you may be in trouble. So you might have to say, what area of the facility do you want to use? You know, one of the things we're looking at is opening up for an hour and then take, 15 minutes to clean, because we don't have a way of exiting people in keeping track of that. So close the facility for 15 minutes, clear it out, and then bring in the next group. Now, along this line, one of the recommendations I'd make strongly as we're looking at this, most of us probably aren't going to open till close to fall. But go ahead and start ordering equipment like PPEs and make sure you're getting fogging equipment, different things now, because everybody is sold out. Everybody's on back order. So if you wait till about a week before you need it, you're not going to open if you plan on using those things. So strongly suggest looking at that right now. And again, most of us, myself included, we're on a budget freeze, but if we can consider this to look for what we need in the fall, let's go ahead and order it now. They hopefully won't charge us till they start sending it, but certainly something you definitely need to look at. If you share facilities with kinesiology or wellness classes or athletics, how are you going to navigate numbers along that line? Because we know we're all going to have to limit some numbers. How are we going to do that? So you have to kind of pay attention to those things. We're looking at a fogger, and every night we'll come in and we'll fog the whole facility. Now, granted, that only lasts for so long, but it's a really deep cleaning amongst everything. A lot of people I'm hearing are using the Clorox 360. Our university is looking at vital oxide because it's a little less. You don't have to wear as much equipment to fog. But just some things to think about as far as when you're trying to open it up, and because we got a social distance and we got to figure that out. And some people are saying 10 feet and some people are saying 6 feet. We don't know when we open up where we're going to land with that. But, a lot of schools I've heard might be moving equipment around a little. I think for us, it's better for us to mark the equipment that's open that day. And then the next day, we open the next piece and we kind of rotate it around a little. And maybe use spaces you can't normally use. If we're social distancing, we're probably not playing 5-on-5 basketball. So could we use those areas for maybe a fitness class or a yoga class? It could better, instead of letting the place sit there empty, possibly use something along those lines. Just some thoughts.
Liz at Radford.
Yeah. So to add to it, because there's so many moving pieces, I'm kind of organizing thoughts into like a containment strategy and cleaning and prevention. And then the next step is like staffing and training. How do we actually implement these pieces before we get into the actual operations and programming? And then the last step, which is really important, is the communications and outreach. And so if we're talking about containment and like has already been shared, a lot of the actual solutions that we have to purchase and some of our new policies and how we're going to organize the building. We've been talking a lot at Radford about even reorganizing our equipment into pods, and so having samples of treadmills and bikes and ellipticals, etc., in one location multiple times throughout the facility, so that we're closing down separate pods for cleaning and sanitation, and everyone will still have access to the same amount of, or the same kinds of equipment. Knowing that perhaps our numbers might be down a little bit too, we have also talked about using racquetball courts and multi-purpose courts and things like that. Because of electricity needs, we've talked about using our selectorized equipment in racquetball courts and then redistributing our cardio equipment and other equipment that might need power. And so, thinking through all of those different pieces, I know a lot of ideas are being thrown out there, and I think kind of organizing those thoughts and then, of course, making them into plans in phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 of reopening and what that will look like. I know during the last roundtable, it was already discussed about making sure that whatever we come up with is adaptable and it's something that we can change tomorrow, knowing that new standards might come out, new results might come out, executive orders, etc. Thanks, Gabby.
Moving right along, Our second question, I was wondering if a few of you could, or all of you if you want, walk us through your facility in a way. When you first reopen, which areas do you foresee being fully open as usual, if any, or whether they're open for use but with modified guidelines, or are there some areas that are going to be closed temporarily? So for some of the bigger facilities, you might do something different in your group exercise rooms compared to your main fitness area, or indoor track versus aquatics. And for other schools that don't have multiple areas, just what do you picture a student encountering as they walk through your facility? Linda, would you be willing to respond first?
Yeah, I love this question because when I saw that which ones will open as usual, I started laughing because nothing's going to open as usual. You know, nothing's going to be usual for a long time. Basically, we're going to make modifications from the way people walk in the door to the way they exit the building and everything in between. I mean, we're just going to have to, unfortunately, but hopefully that'll change back at some point. But for right now, you know, how do you get people in with in a touchless situation so that you're not taking IDs and then giving it back? So we're looking at some new technology. Again, this part of the problem with this is it's all budget contingent. None of us are going to have budgets like we had last year, but the university has to decide as a whole, what do we want to open up? And if we want to open up, we need to make it safe. What is it that needs to make it safe? You know, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which, but for us, our university is looking at mission critical as kind of a guideline on what we do here versus mission optimal. I really like that a lot better, but I mean, we can justify campus recreation is critical, and that's no problem when it comes to everything we do. But it's just, you know, that's how we're looking at budgets and how we're going to open. Till we get better guidance, we probably won't open up our pools. We probably won't open up our locker rooms and shower areas and the climbing walls. We haven't come up with any standards that we're seeing to figure out how to open that up safely where people aren't touching the same thing everybody else does. You know, we always talk about indoor facilities, but a lot of us have outdoor facilities too. We have to think about those and how are we going to open those up safely? If you don't have a fence around your facility, you can't really stop a lot of things. If you do, you can. So those are a little harder because you're not actually out in the areas where the fields are all the time. Some of the changes we're looking at to kind of help open facilities in a modified guidelines is we probably won't sell guest passes until we get things are a little safer. We probably will not allow, you know, people to bring family members in. We probably won't sell community memberships. Again, this is that catch-22 because we got to raise money, but we're taking everything that brings money in, we're canceling because it kind of makes the facility less safe. And anytime we bring outside people in, it takes away from our students. And if we're limited the number of hours they can be in or the number of times they can be in, then that's a little harder to justify. So we'll probably stop some of those things. Family memberships, we're still working on that piece. But, you know, it's really, we're not going to check out equipment. We're not going to rent equipment. People are going to have to bring their own equipment because we don't want to share basketballs and stuff out now, granted, they're going to do it on their own. What we have to do is provide a safe environment. We can't change their behaviors all the time. Now we'll walk around and make sure they're doing the things correctly, but that's some of the things that we're going to look at. You know, obviously we're going to look at the CDC regulations and see what they recommend that we open. ACHA just came out with their guidelines. That's the American College Health Association, and they've got some rec center information in there that is really good. So if you haven't seen that, you know, you should try to get a hold of that because that's got a great link to it. You know, use our colleagues as you're thinking about how to open and how you're going to get things open correctly. Talk to your colleagues, and I think, you know, I love these because these are all kind of the same states that are close to each other. You know, the best thing to do is talk to your colleagues in your same state because you've got state guidelines that you all have to follow. So I can talk to somebody in California and they're going to have a completely different set of guidelines, great ideas. But I know Allie was leading this from Virginia Tech I think it was last time, and she had some great ideas. And I just reached out and said, hey, can you send that to me? And she did, and it just made such a difference because she's in she's in the same boat I am. She's hearing the same governor I am. She's doing the same things I am. So talk to people within your state and figure out how they're going to open up things. And that's one of the best things about campus recreation. We share ideas. We want everybody to succeed. So share those with people, and I'm happy to share anything we have and help out there. But like I said, nothing is going to be normal. Are you going to take temperatures as people walk in? That's still up in the air for us. We don't know about that one yet, but we're trying to create an environment where people don't really touch anything. Well, you have to touch things, but we can clean them after they touch them, or they clean them after they touch them. As little things as possible. And, how do you get people up and down elevators? What about stairs? How do you open those up? And so they're all, do you even use fans in your facility right now? So think about every single piece of your facility and go, okay, how can this help us or hurt us? And there's a lot there, there's a lot of things that you have to look at, but we're not going to make it perfect. We just have to make it the safest we can make it. I love our president's thing is, don't be perfect, just be awesome. So, that's where we're working towards awesome. So, thank you, Jessica.
Anyone else?
I'll just mention from the smaller school side of things that, although business as usual is probably not, it will be a little different, but due to our size, the largest number of people that we have in our facility is probably when we're having academic classes and things like that going on in our facility. And so we're typically able to spread people out enough. And we've got some great wall mounted rigs from Dynamic. And we have some other great dynamic rigs in another room in our facility as well too. So we have some really great equipment in multiple areas, and so we can kind of position people in different spaces. And in all three of those different rooms, we also have dumbbells and kettlebells and wall balls that Darren has so greatly helped us with. So that way we can keep everybody spaced and not have to worry about people being on top of each other, just because our usage may be significantly smaller than like William and Mary, where you probably have as many people in that hour as what we may have in an entire day. It's a little exaggerated, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so we can move a few treadmills around and move our pre-core selectorized equipment around and be able to space everything out and really try to keep as much as normal to our students. We'll do things like prop doors open and things like that, so that way we take out some of those touch points. But for the most part, we can use our gymnasium to really start to space some stuff out, because we did have some leftover flooring because we got some new flooring this past year. And so we have some extra tiles. And so what we're going to do is just take those extra tiles, connect them together in the gym, and make different cardio stations within our gym as well too. So just to kind of go a little extra further.
I can add in some thoughts in addition to what was already been said. I think last time it was talked about how we communicate and educate students, or I think it was like edutainment, probably Steven said that. But it's, getting students to buy into cleaning, not just after you use it, but before you use it as well. And it's just part of the process. You clean your machine, then you use it, you clean it afterwards. And one of the ideas that we've had is making our space set up so that it's easy to shut down a specific area and monitor how many people are in this section of the weight room. And so I understand that staffing can be challenging and being able to enforce how many people are in specific areas. But if you can section things off a little bit, it makes it a little bit more manageable, so that if it is busy time and it's 6 to 8 o'clock at night and there's 50 people in the weight room, if you can limit how many people are in different sections to try to limit the space between people, I think that might be something that we will be trying. Our facility at Radford University, we were able to convert a studio into what we're calling the powerhouse, where we allow Olympic lifting. Some of our heavier lifters will work out in there. And so we've thought about going to a reservation system where they have to reserve the room, and we only allow 5 to 10 people in that room at a time. And so getting creative and thinking about how we could do that. Obviously, that will require more staff to enforce that, to be checking people in, and pieces like that, and using technology to our advantage. We talked about in studios. I'm not sure if we're going to get to this in the next question, but limiting how many people come into a fitness class. And maybe that means that instead of 60-minute classes, we do 30-minute classes with 15 minutes in between, and the instructor teaches it twice, with 10 people in each class, depending on your size. And so we've talked about, I know a lot of people have talked about floor decals, even creating squares on the floor that you have to stay within. And we talked about, making that more appealing by utilizing the squares and doing different drills and incorporating it into your programming in a boot camp class or a core class, yoga class, etc. So those are just some thoughts there. We've talked about whether or not we're limiting how many members come into the facility as a whole, or do we limit how many members are in specific spaces, and what it would take to actually monitor that and enforce that. And that's where the concept of, if we can section off spaces, then let's say we don't have enough staff, we can select different pods or sections to close off for that time, especially if we're not as busy. And so that's one of our strategies that we're going to try to implement.
Well, one of the things for us, I feel, is being on our epidemic response team, is that we may require all people at the university to wear face coverings. So that may be the first change. To come even into our facility, you may have to have your face covered. In addition, we looked at our free weight area, which we do allow Olympic lifting, to require no spotting. So you have to have a weight that you can control. Another thought for us was to take the doors off our studio room. We have a small studio room, but there's no circulation of air in that room. So taking the doors off that room and limited amount of people that go in that room. We've also considered moving some cardio equipment to the lobby, blocking off every machine that someone talked about last time. And the last thing that my staff and I recently talked about was using the entire gym floor for our fitness classes, to hopefully spread people out in that regard. So it's like one of the previous speakers said, it's just going to be very, very different times.
So I think two kind of additional notes, at least from Charlotte's perspective, being maybe a little bit larger of an institution and also having a little bit larger of a facility. Unfortunately, we did just open our brand new beautiful facility in January and had to close it down 2 months later, which was sad. But looking at the space we have, I think something that's fortunate for us is that we do have about 30,000 square feet of fitness space and spread out across 4 different floors throughout the facility. And then having 5 group fitness studios on top of that will allow us to do some of what everyone's kind of talked about, where we can kind of set up sections or parts of the building where we can implement, maybe we cap this area at 50 people or this area at 20 people. So we can kind of spread our participants throughout the facility, which will give us a little bit of wiggle room on how many we can allow in the facility at a time. And the other thing that we've started talking about, which at first back in March, when they first started closing down universities and just different facilities in the state, we had an outdoor space that just got put in back in the fall called the CORE, or the Calisthenic Outdoor Recreation Area. It's essentially like a playground, kind of an adult jungle gym, functional fitness area. It is not sectioned off. So it's just right off of a running path, one of the greenways in the Charlotte area. And we saw an influx use of that when we had to close down our facility. So kind of back to Linda's point of how are you monitoring your outdoor facilities? That's going to be something we'll hopefully start to utilize spaces like the CORE or some of our outdoor fields, or just open areas on campus where we could maybe take a group fitness class outside where we don't have to confine people into a small room or, a 4-walled or area. We can take them out where maybe there's more spacing or they don't have to be quite as close. So I know that's something at Charlotte we're heavily considering, some usage of space, alternative spaces, or even outdoor spaces for our programming. So that way we can still offer those essential programs that we have in the past, but not have to worry about if we do have those restrictions of how many people can be in a space. And the decals on the floor or making boxes. I mean, those are great ideas and I think they will be useful, but it's hard to say, well, if I create a 6-foot box here and then one here, if we're both at the very edge of our 6-foot box, we're within a foot of each other. So it's playing around with some of those alternatives to, instead of having to tape up all of our floors, we want to look at ways that we can still provide those programs, but maybe in just some different spaces we hadn't thought to go to.
Perfect. I think we can move into our third question now, which is what virtual programming solutions have been working for you or have you implemented? And do you plan to continue offering virtual options after reopening? So Liz at Radford, are you offering virtual programming right now, and how is that going?
Yes, and we were in the process of kind of coming up with some of those options prior to all of the changes that have been happening. So continuing along that path, I think this is the direction the industry was going anyways. And I have a lot of ideas. If I can just push real quick pause to say for the previous question, I just wanted to reiterate too, I think we have a pretty strong feeling about being able to police like member behavior and saying like you must remain 10 feet away from each other. We can give recommendations and we can set it up so that you can do those things, but I don't know how we would enforce something like that. But we can control what our employees are doing. And so the other piece I heard, like, spotting people and whether or not we're going to allow that. I think we can't lose the piece where, safety first. People will be more injured if we get rid of some guidelines in the chance that we can continue to spread a virus. And so keeping all those pieces in mind, I think, is really important. And I've been using a lot of the URSA guidelines. URSA's been compiling a lot of this too. So I wanted to throw that out there before I forgot, because I will forget all those things. But back to your question about virtual programming. We have been able to experiment a lot with doing some virtual fitness classes. And so when it comes to terminology, we had offered previously virtual classes in the studios through Les Mills Virtual. And so continuing to offer something like that. And we have looked into Wellbeats and several other platforms and how we can continue to offer more quantity of classes actually with smaller numbers and what that would look like. And how would we enforce how many people are in an area at a time doing those things? Obviously, the pieces that go into that is like bringing your own yoga mat and not being able to share equipment. After every class, is there a staff member in there sanitizing the equipment and making sure that policies are being enforced, even if like the floor, if somebody sneezes on the floor or something like that. And also, educating and making sure people know, like, you're not going to transmit anything through sweat and through touching, right? It's all going to be respiratory. And so we have also done virtual classes not in the building. So we've tried the Zoom classes where people actually sign up and are sent the Zoom link. We are trying some Instagram live classes, some Facebook live classes to kind of see what platform works best. And although we might get more hits doing an Instagram live class, we think less people are engaging, and we can't really track numbers and know who's doing it. And then we get into some liability things. And so being able to control who is signing up and then sending them a Zoom link is probably the direction we'll be headed for some of those options for people. And another really great idea that our students had is they're doing a lot of at-home workouts. And whether that's a simple thing through TikTok or a quick little like 5-minute challenge that you can do and post, that works really well. But we do have some personal trainers working really hard on creating some like a 4-week program that you can follow, and you got beginner, intermediate, advanced options for you. And maybe we join a special Facebook group or something for all those people who have signed up for the Highlander 30-day challenge or something along those lines, so that we can still be doing workouts at home. I think our trainers have really enjoyed getting creative with coming up with different exercises and programs you can do with the equipment at your house, using book bags and using gallons of water or milk. And so, you know, something like that is the direction we're probably going to head. And then with personal training, we've talked about doing like a hybrid of virtual and live personal training. I think a lot of schools were considering going into a membership model anyways. And so having a membership model for personal training where you pay X amount of dollars and it includes maybe a pre-assessment and a post-assessment with a trainer and maybe one live personal training session, but then you also get these touch points virtually using platforms like maybe Trainerize, My PT Hub, and I know there's quite a few out there now. Or it might be contact through just Facebook or a Zoom meeting or something like that with your trainer to kind of limit the exposure. And that allows us to work closely with our outdoor people and see if we can provide some workouts and things that people can do outside. And so all those ideas have kind of been thrown out there, you know, and implementing them and seeing what kind of staff we have available to do that is all going to change the conversation. Yeah, and we've also been thinking a lot about how are we going to recruit and train instructors and personal trainers moving forward. And can we do that through webinars? Can we do that virtually? And pieces like that. I'll stop there.
Yeah, College of William & Mary, we were pretty lucky because within 48 hours we were able to get up a virtual website, and that was partly because our web and design got really excited about it. So they helped us a lot. I mean, they were working at midnight for us, which you don't ever get. So we were lucky. A couple things I would say about it, and we're lucky again. We're under the umbrella of health and wellness, so that helps a little bit. But I would say get as many people involved as possible. You don't want it necessarily just a campus recreation. Not that that's a bad thing, but the more people you have around it, the more support you get. So we have, you know, our counseling centers putting things on there. Our health promotion specialists are putting things on there. Our health centers putting stuff on there. Psychology professors want to add stuff. We had a great article on flourishing during times of stress, you know, for this kind of situation. And we've been fortunate enough to get some data back from students that are using it. Our first class we offered had 160 students in it, which was great. And then we taped them all, and we taped some of them, and then they go on our YouTube channel. We had to shut down our YouTube channel because we had too many views. So I'll take that as a win. But they've increased it for us, which is nice. But I would say, you know, I got 63% of the students that responded said it helped reduce their stress and it helped with their mental health. And we know those are buzzwords all the time on college campuses right now, but certainly right now. So when you can say that, when we're looking to be mission critical, that's a good support for us. And one of the young ladies, I think it was a young lady because I think she had her name there, responded that it made her feel like she was still part of the university, even from home. And it was her connection back to the university, and she felt like somebody had her back. Now, again, you got to use any of these as wins right now. So I think we'll always, like Liz said, we'll always continue to do the virtual, whether we had planned on it before or not, because we're seeing students really enjoy that. A lot of them love the camaraderie of being in the room, but if you can only have 15 people in a room and 60 people want to take a class, let's do both. Why can't we do both? And don't make it just about fitness and wellness. You know, we were not involved in esports at all until this, and now we are. How many people have intramural championship T-shirts left over because they couldn't play their last sports? So we did an activity challenge, and anybody that reached a certain level, we're going to give them an intramural championship shirt. Just because we had all these, they got a date on them. I don't want to waste them. So just kind of be creative with it, and don't make it just about you. Get as many people involved as possible. I mean, I think somebody did finger meditation, and that was one of the most popular videos we had because it took like 5 minutes and everybody was happy. So just, some of them need to be short, some of them need to be longer, but just I think they are keeping us relevant at a time where relevance is extremely important on a college campus.
The one thing that I'd like to add for Gardner Webb is we started.
And then you finished.
Uh-oh. We may have to contact Brian and ask him to hang up and rejoin. Seems to be significantly hung up. In the meantime, Liz from UNC Charlotte, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so definitely the virtual has been something that our department, since we've all been asked to stay at home and work, has been kind of the forefront of what a lot of us have been thinking about and doing and implementing. And there's kind of been two sides to virtual. What I'll say first is that we definitely utilized student affairs as a whole to go through this. So I know myself and a couple others in the department have been on like either biweekly or every other week type meetings where we talked through what all of the organizations and departments within student affairs are doing to meet their students and to engage with them. So that's been really good for us to kind of not just what is Campus Rec doing and UREC, but what is kind of student affairs doing as a whole. And that's been really beneficial to kind of integrate those. Same thing, we created a landing page. I think ours took us a week or two to get up there, but we have a landing page online that's for all the virtual engagement across student affairs, which has been really good. And then the second part of the virtual has been more so engaging with our employees too, and our patrons, where we've created things through social media, whether it's challenges. Something that did very, very well for us weren't just the fitness challenges, which I think people have liked and enjoyed in our virtual group fitness classes, but we did a few that were like last week in particular on April 30th, which was our 1-year remembrance of our event last year. We had a 4.9 remembrance run, walk, jog challenge, and that actually went very well. We had a ton of engagement where we had somebody that challenged the rec department, and then the rec department spread it out to all of its followers. So we were able to kind of spread that amongst various populations across campus, and we saw a lot of positive messages getting posted of people finishing their run, posting a picture, posting a little snapshot of their mileage. So that was a cool engagement piece, which, yes, it was physical fitness, but I think it was more about the sense of community and social connection than it was just to actually get the mileage done. And then some of the other ones that have gone very well are instead of the physical fitness ones, we've done send us a throwback playlist or song to put on a playlist, and we made a UREC throwback workout playlist. So just on Instagram, we put one of those little questions that was like, write in the name of your song. And we got a lot of engagement on that. And then some other ones we've done are like the IMs have done some bracket challenges, and it's like your non-traditional like animal challenges. So like pick which animal you feel like's gonna win, and then we do the votes through Instagram as well. And you could also submit a bracket for it. So kind of in place of the March Madness stuff. So some of those we've seen some pretty good engagement and participation on the social media side. And then the last piece for virtual that I think's gone really well for us was a lot of you all probably didn't get to do your end of year celebrations. And I know we were able to do one virtually through Zoom. And we had a lot of graduating seniors who have been with our department for a long time. So seeing that engagement piece from them joining the Zoom call and just getting that last chance to kind of say bye and thank you for your time. We recognized all the graduating seniors. We recognized some award winners in the various program areas. And I mean, it was just special. Like, yes, we didn't get to do it in person like we always do, and we love that piece of it, but it was the next best thing to be able to see everybody virtually and get that engagement. And then the last other plug I'll make, not so much for virtual programming, but just for anyone who's looking to engage more students, both on the employee side, but even those who maybe don't work for you yet. I know Liz, I think, mentioned this with getting some instructors and trainers. A lot of the organizations right now are offering either somewhat discounted or even there are some free, like TRX is still putting out free certifications right now. They're limited spots, so you definitely need to catch them when they post them. But some of these organizations and certification groups are doing a lot to meet us virtually where we are, since they know you can't in-person host certifications anymore. And even like a bunch of groups where you had to go take an exam somewhere at a location, you can't do that either because the testing centers are closed down. So SCW has been another big one that's put a lot of push out for certifications that are somewhat discounted, and you can virtually do a Zoom call where you get to see the instructor face to face, and then you get to learn the materials, and they do an examination via like a lockdown browser or something at your home that you can do through your own personal computer. So definitely I have a few of them, so if anybody's interested, I can share the ones I know about. I know there's a ton out there, so definitely be looking out for any discounted certifications or continuing education credits as well.
I'm so sorry, Brian, you froze actually right as you were starting to answer. So
Sorry.
If you want to just do a quick, like 1 minute, I do want to leave enough time for the chat, but I don't want to skip over what you were about to say.
Sure. I was just going to say, Wellbeats, because we used Fitness on Demand years ago, and we've switched over with this free trial from Wellbeats, and it's been well received because I know many people charge for intramurals and for group fitness. We've not always done that in the past, and that may not be an option because students aren't going to have jobs. Most of these places are going to be closed, so we can charge all we want for group fitness classes. But if they don't have any money, they're not paying for the classes. So then the joke's kind of on us for charging them. And so we're really going to look into this Wellbeats because I think our students have enjoyed this free option. And so we're going to continue doing that because, or continue to talk about that because it gets them alone. It isolates them instead of necessarily maybe having to come to the facility. They can do that in their dorm room or do it outside. So there's a lot of great resources that I think the more we can create free resources for students, the better, because they're getting hit with fees, they're getting hit with all kinds of things. The more free we can make, the better for us in Campus Rec. And I know that's tough for budgets because that makes many of our budgets, but still, it's a tough thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just add one thing? I mean, it's not about the virtual part, but again, in case we run out, if I can leave you with any one thing, it's get on any university committee you can get on with that they're talking about de-densifying facilities and making facilities safe, because nobody knows campus recreation or recreation on your campus better than you do. So their heart might be in the right way, but their knowledge might not be there. So they may think things are great ideas that don't work in a rec center. So if you can get yourself on those committees, do so, because it'll make a big difference in the long run. That'd be my thought, that I don't want people not here.
Thank you for sharing that. I do think we can at this point turn the corner into the Q&A session. And I know we have about 12 minutes left. I do want to say if people are still interested in hearing and don't have anything to run off to, maybe we could extend just like 5 minutes even past 2 p.m. Obviously, if our panelists have to check out, that's totally fine. But there are a lot of really good questions, and I don't want anyone to like miss out on a big crucial chunk of what they had asked. So I'm gonna try to start around the beginning of when people started submitting questions. So one question we got was, is anyone requiring face coverings of patrons or just concentrating on spacing and social distancing?
I think that'll kind of be dependent on where the guidelines fall when we're able to open. If they recommend them, we definitely will. If they say at that point, if they're saying face masks aren't making much of a difference, or we've kind of passed the peak, we might not. Definitely the workers will, but whether it's kind of hard to work out sometimes with the face mask. It's also kind of hard to check people in with a face mask because you don't necessarily know that that's who they really are. And we really want to secure the facilities right now. So I think it really will be dependent on where things land in the next couple months when most of us are opening up.
Yep.
We've thought about it a little. With that, you just got to think about like the carbon dioxide that you're getting back from that mask. And when you increase oxygen intake and you've got your face covered by that, some of these high intensity on treadmills or ellipticals, you really need to think about that. And your staff is really going to have to pay attention. You could have people pass out, fall out. And so like there's some serious cautions with wearing masks like that, or extreme covering of your face. I mean, you got them crazy elevation mask things that people wear and stuff like that. But when people aren't used to that or accustomed to that, you really need to pay attention to it.
You're right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Another question we got was, what do you do if a certain person was in your facility 2 days ago, for instance, and now they test positive for COVID-19? Does anyone have a contingency plan, just something you would definitely do? Might be a tough one. That's a $1 million question.
We're fortunate enough to have Fusion, so we could tell who was in the facility at that time. so we could reach out. But again, I think some areas of the state, different states are doing a really good job of contacting people when they've been around somebody. I was in a meeting with somebody who came down positive, so the Department of Health contacted me and said, "You're out for 2 weeks." Again, I don't know where we're going to be at that point, because the college campuses are, they're not looking at what we're going to do when we get it, that what happens when you get a case, because we're going to get cases. It's how do we handle them? And I think that's a great question that I would love to hear where people are going to land on that one.
I would imagine that the university, that would come from the university, because if the students in your building, then they're in other buildings on campus. So I don't know if we would need to email people who've been in the rec center, especially because we know the virus can live for a pretty long time on some surfaces. So I doubt every building would be reaching out to individual students. I think it would be at a bigger level.
Might be a little easier for Brian.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I mean, treat them like people. Like they don't have Ebola, or it is bad, but like we still love and care for them because they're our students, and like how we treat them will, impact them much longer than what the coronavirus does. And so, because if they choose to leave our university by the way we treated them, so like we just got to be very cautious and careful. Because that's a big lawsuit too if you discriminate against somebody because they have COVID-19. So like legally, you got to protect yourself there too. You can't, you got to just be real careful.
Our university is setting up rooms in a residence hall. Where they're going to have rooms for people that come down with it. And certainly at that point, you can isolate the person, but what you can't do necessarily is figure out everybody they've been around.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the number of really good answers that you all just gave. Actually, that was really good. Let's see. There's a question that came in: how are campus facilities working with their athletic staff? I think that's getting at, are you collaborating and trying to come up with a common system?
We certainly are for our sport clubs and our intramural programs. So we'll kind of follow the lead on the NCAA for sport clubs. Intramurals is a little different, but we'll still pay attention to that. Unfortunately, the NCAA hadn't come up with an answer yet either. So I think we'll collaborate from that aspect. It'll be hard for the university to say we can't have a club soccer team if they're letting the varsity soccer team practice, but we'll just kind of, I think we really do have to all be on the same page with that one.
There was also, following up on the masks question, actually, will you be requiring your Group X instructors to wear masks while teaching? Are you requiring all your staff and they're included?
The one thing that I'd point out about that is if you do have hearing impaired students, that mask can cause a huge distraction if they're trying to read lips, if they're trying to understand, maybe they're not deaf, but maybe they're hard of hearing, and so now you've created another stumbling block for that student with that disability. So it's just something really to think through and to think about. And then you've got their own risk of those things that I'd mentioned earlier about wearing a mask while exercising.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from some of our fitness, or a couple of our fitness panelists about the microphones also. So for fitness instructors, a lot of them use microphones and they all share the same microphone. Are you using covers? How are you planning on looking at that? That's not my expertise. I'm a great fitness person, but it's not me.
I can talk a little bit, like windscreens, encouraging instructors to get their own windscreen, or purchasing and providing windscreens for your instructors. I think it would be extremely difficult to teach a fitness class with a face mask on. I would pass out, I'm sure, if I tried to teach cycle with a mask on. And so it's going to be hard whether that we provide Clorox wipes or something like that to wipe down the microphone before and after use, with your own windscreen. I mean, those little black olive things, you know, they're like $4 each too. And so if you have 50 instructors, that's a good chunk of money. We have 10, so I think we could do that. But yeah, that would probably be the direction we go. We've even talked about making sure we have microphones for virtual classes, for Zoom classes and things like that, and making sure that our instructors are having a good audio experience. But yeah, we're gonna have to probably provide windscreens, I think.
Mhm.
And I tried dipping a windscreen in rubbing alcohol and it disintegrates, so don't do that.
Real quick, I will keep reading more questions. There are more questions coming in, but before we get too close to 2 o'clock, if we could just do a quick poll. If this session has been helpful to you and you would be interested in a potential follow-up discussion, just type yes in the chat just so we can know what to plan for. And after we conclude today, I will be sending out a link to a survey along with the link to the recording and the full chat transcript so that you can take that survey and submit topics that you might be interested in hearing people talk about. That's been really helpful because we definitely need that guidance from you all. So please go ahead and fill out that survey when I send it out. Okay, back to a few more questions. What about fitness class fees? Who is charging and who is offering classes for free? I think, Brian, you said, are all your classes free?
Yeah, we do. We have a functional fitness class and the other online stuff that we offer it for free just because students pay an initial student activity fee at the beginning of the year anyways as a student. And so we get a portion of that. And so we just use that. But me and my staff, my pro staff are the ones that teach courses. I don't have a ton of students that are banging down my door to teach a fitness class. They want to take them, but they don't want to teach them. And so any online platforms that we can use has been very, very helpful for me. And many times that's their world. So they do a good job at it. So I'll let them do their thing and I'll just push what they do.
And we're lucky, 2 years ago, we started free classes thanks to a generous donor that gave it a large endowment so we can pay for all of our instructors through the interest off the endowment. So we're able to offer free classes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do it because we offer probably 60 or 70 a week. And you can't have my donor.
I'll say I went from a university that made a large amount of their budget off of paying for Group X to a university that offered it for free. And so the biggest piece that we have focused on is proving that attending group fitness classes or being active or using the rec center impacts their academic performance or their retention. And so any way that you can assess how many people and who is doing your fitness classes, even if it's virtual, and if you can prove that those students are more likely to stay in school or to do better in school, then if you don't reach your, budget requirements, then perhaps that can help. But that's all I got.
All right, I think we just have one more question. I'm sorry if I missed anybody's, but this one says, do you have any plans on safe implementation of fitness assessments, emergency situations, and taking blood pressure?
And along with that, cleaning up spills. Those happen all the time, whether it's blood or somebody exercises a little too hard and share some things with you. We'll have all the safety equipment. We'll follow all the same the requirements we have right now with biohazard bags and everything along that lines. Obviously mask will be important. Some people are talking about, because from our counseling department, not necessarily using masks, but using shields, because when you're in a counseling environment, not being able to see the counselor's expressions makes a big difference. So, possibly looking at shields versus masks for our workers, not necessarily our participants or anything like that, but just to provide a little different protection where people can still see your face.
I think something that's going to be challenging for us, which we haven't made any decisions on it yet, but since I oversee the personal training staff, I mean, we're not going to be able to do new clients, new assessments until we know more on can people be within 6 feet of each other. I mean, a lot of doctors' offices are starting to resume like normal operations in the coming weeks, at least in North Carolina. So I think that'll be kind of the next indicator is when is it okay to have that person-to-person contact? So things like fitness assessments, new personal training clients, definitely online personal trainings on my agenda to create by the time we get back in the fall. But that initial assessment piece, we may have to look at online versions of it first, and you may not get all of the health indicators you wanted because you can't do things like blood pressure or skin calipers for body composition. So there's a lot that I think we won't know until we get more guidance from things like the CDC. But that's definitely going to force us into some of these new trends that like online personal training or virtual streaming classes, which I think sometimes Campus Rec can be a little bit behind the curve on some of the fitness trends. Not that it's a bad thing, but this is kind of pushing us forward into some of those trends, which is a good thing.
The one thing I'd like to add that dealing with our staff, just because we do have such a small staff, is that I want to try to adjust my schedule with my professional staff and my graduate assistants, just because some of the risks that we're placing on work study students, they get paid so little anyways. I mean, for many of them, it's minimum wage or just above minimum wage. And so that's a lot of risk that we're asking them to do to be the front line of most of this as we sit in our offices or as we have meetings. And so one of the things that I'm going to encourage my GAs and my other pro staff is to really shift some schedules around. So that way there's kind of always some type of professional presence in the building, just because I don't want to put all that risk on a minimum wage work study staff member. That's a lot of pressure on them that they're wearing most of it.
Probably go ahead and wrap up, and we are just a little past the 1 hour mark, but if any of you have any follow-up questions after the call, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you want to connect with one of our panelists, we may be able to help make that connection. Again, we want to thank all of our participants for joining in, and especially our panelists for their contributions and their thoughtfulness and leading our discussion so well. Thank you to Darren and Pete for bringing everyone together. And with that, I hope you all have a safe and healthy weekend.
Really quick, Jessica, thank you too for coordinating all this in advantage.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. Thanks so much.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jess. Have a good weekend, everyone.